for everything. So again, I see a few more people have just joined. Welcome. We are doing Thrifty Thursdays, budgeting using apps or Excel. If you've just popped on, feel free to answer the questions in the chat, but we're going to go ahead and get going. So my name is Samantha Roth. I will be leading this Thrifty Thursday and presenting, and helping me out today is Sharon Powell. She'll be monitoring the chat and interrupting if there's questions I need to address and that kind of stuff in a good way. So feel free to put questions into the chat and we will try to make sure we have time to review them at the end. So if you do want or need some captions and able to, Shannon, we were just saying, put where you're from as well as any app that you currently use and why you like it or what's its name. You're welcome. So closed captioning, this is how you do it. There is transcripts available to use, and we want to make sure people know how to use that. So if you've been here for the last 2 weeks, you've heard this little spiel, but Sharon and I just wanted a little bit of time to jump deeper into topics that we talk about when we're doing our regular 1-hour classes on budgeting or dealing with debt and credit and that kind of stuff. And we will say, like, you should check out apps, but then we can continue on because we don't have time to dive in deeper. So this is why we're doing the Thrifty Thursdays. We also have a tendency to use the steps to a successful budget and want to remind people of that as well, you know, to set your financial goals. A big part about sticking to a budget or a spending plan is to track those expenses, make a plan, follow the plan, then look at it, evaluate it, and then make changes. And this is, you know, something that's done for most people on a monthly time frame, but you can have budgets for other time frames as well. So today is all about apps and a little bit about Excel. So why apps? Online tools and apps you've probably have all seen have been on the rise, and it helps us to manage our finances like never before. Whether you're trying to budget smarter or put more away towards retirement, there's an app for all kinds of financial goals that you want to meet. I thought it was interesting is that a study was done by the University of British Columbia in Canada, found that when people start using a finance app, they spend less in dining and drinking, typically 17%, less the first month, and an additional 14% for the next 6 months. So that's pretty good usage. It also found that at first users spent less on groceries and fuel, but after 2 months, their spending in those specific areas ricocheted back, although they didn't say why. So what are pros and cons to using apps? A big pro is that accessibility. Most of us have our phone with us at all times, probably places we don't need a phone, but we still have it with us. That ability to track, as well as to be able to share. So if you're, you know, a family with a couple adults in it or with a partner and trying to do a financial plan together, both of you could have the same app, the same account, and be able to look at it back and forth as well. What is the con is that you still have to do the work. Just because you download an app doesn't mean you're magically going to have this amazing spending plan to follow and that you're going to do it. So, you know, just something to keep in mind as we're talking about this. It makes life a little bit easier, but you still do have to do work. So we're going to just do a few quick overviews about the different financial apps. There's your banking, mobile payment services, budgeting, spending, saving, and debt reduction as well. There are also ways with apps that you can sync several types of financial accounts, or you can opt out of syncing depending on what your comfort level ahead. It helps to plan ahead for financial decisions versus simply tracking past transactions. Some apps will even categorize and create custom categories as well. You can track bills and receive alerts for upcoming due dates and that kind of stuff, and also share financial information with partners. It's important when you're looking at apps to read the reviews to get an idea of what you do or don't like. The ones we're kind of talking about today are the ones that like rise to the top in Google Play, Apple, the Apple Store, that kind of stuff, as well as reviewed. Sharon and I don't recommend, like Minnesota Extension does not have an official recommendation. These are the apps to use. We do want to kind of give people an idea of what is out there and how they can use them. So the first app we're going to talk about is, just a banking app. These are typically tied to the financial institution, whether that's a bank or credit union you currently have. All have different capabilities. For most people, this is probably the first time they've used an app, so that we can check our balances on the daily, so we know how much is available, or if this check did or didn't come out, that kind of stuff. You're also able to see, any deposits or charges that you have pending. So if you have a super busy day and you totally forgot you ran to the grocery store and picked up groceries and are going to pay a big bill, rent, mortgage, making sure you have that money there so you can avoid overdrafts and that kind of stuff. Banking apps, and that's any financial institution. Oftentimes you can transfer money electronically on the app between, checking and savings, occasionally between other institutions. It depends how your bank or credit union has that set up. You can also, for the most part, deposit checks using your smartphone on the mobile app. That's super convenient. Like I still have my hometown bank that I had when I was, I opened up in 7th grade and I live 9 hours away. So it's really convenient. If somebody gives me a check, I can just endorse it, take a picture of it, and it's in my account the next day versus having to mail it or wait till I go visit my parents and have it in there as well. And it's also, like I said, instead of writing checks and mailing them, most of those bills you can also pay online, and it is secure as long as you follow those best practices for keeping your information safe. Another thing we're going to talk about is mobile payment services. So these are Venmo, PayPal, Google Pay, Apple Pay, all of those things. These are coming up on the rise, and it's important to think about like how to stay safe and avoid some risky behaviors. So with these sort of apps, I think most people are very familiar with them. They are considered apps, although like PayPal you can use on a desktop, Venmo you can use on a desktop. They're not necessarily only available on a phone, but they are still considered app. It's important in the US, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and PayPal are the top 3 by a fair percentage of that. It is important to know that if you do have an error with those, you should still contact your bank or payment provider to respond to that error. Contacting PayPal isn't going to do much typically. You have to stop it at the level the money comes out, so your bank or your credit union. Most of these forms of payment do offer protections as well during payment, but if you ever use any of these, you'll notice that it'll be like, is this a business or is this a friend? And the protections between those two are different for each of the apps. We'll also talk, on the slide, you can see that it's important to, take some precautions, know who you're sending money to, have them request money so you're getting the right person, especially if somebody has a very common name. That can be really tricky, tricky, especially if they don't have a picture. Like I just sent money to a friend and I was like, I had no idea there were so many people who had this name. Like she's the only one I've ever met. It's not that common of a name, but there were 7 people to choose from and only 2 had a picture. Thankfully hers had a picture, but it was a picture from probably 10 years ago. So she was a lot younger. And I was just like, I hope this is her. And I double checked. She did send me her exactly what it was, but it's important to look at that. It's also good if you have your banking as well as these apps, the mobile payment services, that you have kind of a firewall or a safeguard to have it to require a passcode, a PIN, or a fingerprint, so that somebody can't just open up your phone and send money to themselves without having to have, knowing one of those 3 things as well. So our next one is on budgeting. So these are pretty popular ones. A few of you have talked about Mint, and Mint would probably fall into this category as well. NerdWallet, Spending Tracker, Sharon mentioned that one. Truebill, envelopes. We talked last week about using an envelope system and that kind of stuff. And envelopes, there is an app called Envelopes, which has that same, if you use a debit card or a credit card, you can track that. You Need a Budget is tied to like Dave Ramsey, if you've ever heard of him. That's their app platform that they use. and then weekly as well. So budgets are a little bit different than a spending tracker, because it doesn't, because it kind of sees the overall picture. It's not just about spending. So it'll require you to put in your income as well. It'll have, like, here's my plan for the month. And each of these, again, are a little different to what they really focus on. So that's when reading the reviews is super helpful. But these are the most popular budgeting ones. Things to think about when you're using the budgeting and the spending tracker apps that they often have is a lot of them will have the ability to sync your bank or credit card accounts, and some of them don't require it. So you can make the decision, like, what's your comfort level? Are you okay with everything being synced? The benefit of that is that it happens automatically. If you don't sync it, then you're responsible for going in and putting in, I got groceries today and I spent this much. I got gas and I spent this much. I had childcare, I spent this much. To do that, where if it's tied to your debit card, credit card, that kind of stuff, it can automatically take it out. So a little bit more work if you don't sync. Both of these, the spending and the budget, will have categories for each expense, from entertainment to restaurants to rent, mortgage to utilities. Some allow you to create your categories, other are very structured, where these are the 5-6 categories we have, and that's all you can use. There are also ways to customize that budget if you have specific requests. And then each app seems to have this like miscellaneous perk, and you may think it's a perk, and I might think it's the most annoying thing in the world. So you never know. That's why it's really hard to say, like, there is no app that will work for every single person. So that's a challenge as well, to think about that. Okay. So I talked a little bit about the budget apps. The spending apps are helpful when you're wanting to start building that budget, but you're not really sure what does that mean. So a budget is when you already have kind of the plan laid out. This is what my income is. This is what I'm going to save. This is what I'm going to spend. If you don't have that plan laid out, starting with just a spending app is super helpful. So Money Tracker, it's just a spending app. Money Manager expenses. Pros to this is that it helps to build that budget, to get an idea of where you're spending it, how much you're spending it. It also helps to, give a guesstimate, like, I think I spend about $300 on groceries, and see if you do or don't. And ideally with spending, you want to track it for a couple of months, because every month is a little bit different on what we're paying expensive on. Again, these apps don't hold people accountable. You have to use them on a regular basis, check in on them. And sometimes when you're looking at budgeting or spending apps only, you kind of forget about, any cash that you use, or saving for long-term and retirement plans and that kind of stuff as well.
Sam?
Yes.
Can we take a break? There's a couple of questions that have been coming in. I think might be good to go ahead and ask.
Okay.
The first one, someone wanted to know what your feelings are about Zelle. Like, if you, they just wanted you to talk a little bit about Zelle.
Yeah. So some specific banks, I saw somebody, US banks uses Zelle.
Wells Fargo uses it too. It's really like
so
out there.
I think the biggest thing when we think about Zelle and those mobile payment is, what protection is it? So like when I think of Venmo just hangs out on my phone. So my nephew, who is 8, he knows my passcode, because he's one of those kids. So he could go on, and without doing anything, he could Venmo himself if he had a Venmo money, and I probably wouldn't see it because I don't get a notification. Where other money ones, Google Pay, Apple Pay, like, I get a notification that something was sent or spent. So if I sent money or I spent money, I get that notification. It also requires me to put my thumb print on there. So like my nephew can't send money via Google Pay, Apple Pay, that kind of stuff. So that layer of protection. And I saw somebody was asking about security. So the apps that require kind of that two author, what does dual make us do? To authorization. So 2 levels of authorization. So you have to get into your phone and then you have to get into the app. It's not an automatic will make a difference. Is Zelle better or worse? It kind of depends with all of them. What are you using it for? The nice thing with Zelle, Venmo, I can't forget the other big one.
PayPal,
What?
PayPal,
No, there's another one that's like Venmo. Is that they're when you
Cash
send
App.
money, it might be Cash App. When you send money, nobody is getting your like routing or bank numbers. That's hidden. And that's why like US Bank, Wells Fargo are using it so that it's able to do, and all you get is that, Sam's received $10 from Sharon Powell, but it doesn't say like Sam has received Sharon Powell from bank number. So it's like not handing over a check to somebody I don't know. I know Sharon, so I could hand her a check and be okay with it. But it's not necessarily better or worse. When you are using apps, every privacy policy look to see what do they do with your information, how do they use it, that kind of stuff. So is it better or worse? No, they're all just a little bit different as well. The biggest thing is to think about how you're protecting yourself. Like I said, on my phone, I should really set up that Venmo. I have to log into it every time, not that it's automatic. Is there other questions, Sharon?
Mm-hmm. And then also just about Zelle, Ray says that Zelle's drawback is it doesn't offer fraud protection for authorized payments. Zelle won't refund you. So you got to be careful about that.
Yeah.
That's weird too, because if someone uses your bank card and takes money from your account or somehow takes money from your checking account, you will be refunded if you report it within 30 days. So it's strange that if the money's coming out of your account and the Zelle is linked to your bank account, that's like, to me, that seems like a loophole.
And I'm thinking that's one of those like where Zelle won't take care of it, but you might have to report to your bank and they will see what they can or can't do as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there.
Oh, Margaret just changed her Venmo account to require passcode and Face ID. Nice job.
Yep.
Okay, there are other questions though. There's well, there was just kind of a comment / issue. People have mentioned that Mint is a pain to use sometimes because there's often trouble with linking to bank accounts. So then someone asked a question about, is Mint good for budgeting because they're considering getting it? And so that you can speak to that, maybe, Sam.
Yeah. So Mint isn't one that I love. But I have a coworker who like it's her go-to app, and
for the record, I also don't love it, but not because I've lost money with them or anything. It's just as inconvenient for me too.
Yeah. And so it's like there are certain things I don't need to be put into a budget, or I mean they're budgeted, but like my rent, I don't care if that comes in and out a budgeting app all the time. So when I am using a spending or a budgeting one, I prefer to put in or scan my receipts and not have it synced because of those connectivity issues. And like my parents live in an area, there's not great cell phone coverage. So when there isn't Wi-Fi or cell phone coverage, like all that stuff I have to manually enter anyways. So yeah, like if you live in a place that you're always connected, you probably shouldn't have sync issues. I have noticed with Mint, if you have a more local bank or, like Old National here is where I live in Minnesota, Old National isn't a national chain. So there might be, and not that Old National has this problem, it's just the first bank that came to mind in Minnesota. That is a smaller, more like community focused versus a Wells Fargo US Bank. They could have some connectivity issues because their programs aren't set up for all of this syncing and stuff as well. And I have run into where like my hometown bank just a year ago, you could finally sync it up. Before that, they did not allow it on their end. So that makes a difference too.
Yes. And finally, there was a question about which apps are best for responsibly using data. Someone was saying they're pretty worried about, they're just safety, and I don't blame you. It's concerning,
Yeah. I think I have a slide, if I remember correctly, that talks a little bit more about safety. So if I don't, I'll come back to that question if that works.
Okay, I think someone asked also about maybe about, did somebody ask about like the best ones for budgeting or if they cost? I can't quite remember. I'll
There
have to go
was a
back and look
question I
through.
saw quickly about cost. So
Mhm.
most of the apps have like a basic platform where you can use for free. But if you want more specific, so like they might have like, here's the 5 categories we have, but if you want to create your own categories, then you have to pay. So there's like for additional services, you're going to pay more.
Or like I've used spending tracker, the one in the middle here with the cute little dollar thing. I think it's such a cute little icon. I've used it for years, the free version. And just recently I've started tracking my spending again to just do an update. And now with the free version, they have the most annoying commercials running all the time. So it finally wore me down. And so I paid for the upgrade, but it's a one-time fee of $3. So
Oh, okay.
for me, it was about, it was worth it. But you just have to decide. It's doing the same thing, just without the ads now.
Yep. Oh, okay. All right. So saving, you can, so there are some apps like the budget and the spending are kind of multi-leveled and layered, but then the saving and debt reduction apps are specific to that aspect of it. So saving is focusing on either I want to just save additional money, I want to think about retirement, I'm having a vacation, I need a different vehicle, I want to set my emergency, whatever it is. These 3, Loot, Peak Money, and the 52-week money saving are all apps that kind of have risen to the top of people who are downloading them, the best reviews, that kind of stuff. If you're not familiar, there's a 52-week saving challenge. So somebody just put that idea into the app where, week 1, you save $5, week 2, you save $5, week 3, you save 10, or however it's set up, or however you want it to set up. But the idea is you're setting money aside every single week. And then what you do with it is, determined by you. The other 2 are more focused on like, these are what I'm saving for, versus just a challenge of I want to save every week, if that makes sense. The next one is a debt reduction. This one we do endorse. I said earlier we don't endorse apps, but this one we kind of do endorse because it is made and developed by Utah State Extension. They designed and developed it. It is a self-directed debt elimination plan. So if you're trying to figure out, I have $3,000 in credit card debt, a few different cards, this is what I'm going to do. And the nice thing about this is that there is in the in-power pay, there is steps to be able to, what is my debt? Do you want to use the avalanche method or do you want to use the snowball method, which are just 2 different ones looking at interest rates. One is looking at the highest amount and going from there. There's a spending plan aspect inside of it. It'll tell you like how much you're going to save. So if you look here, this is just an example, like these are, there's a PayPal balance. This person has 3 credit cards. Those are what they charge on it. And then I'll show you the compare. So if I'm just doing what my credit card and PayPal tell me to do, it'll take me 4 years and 10 months and cost me $6,082. Or if I use Power Pay, I'll have that paid off in almost half the time, 2 years and 9 months, and save about $500. No, that's not right. I'll save some money. So yeah, I'll save $177. Look at that. It even has it written out. I don't have to do math in my head. So it's a nice one to kind of think about like what you're going to use. PowerPay does require, you can use it on a desktop or they do have the app. It does require logging in and then it will track. So every time you make a payment, it tracks to help you see where your debt is going as well. So again, we've been sharing apps, what you like, and then any other questions about the apps. I didn't talk about, what was I going to talk about? Safety, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So again, the biggest thing with apps is like everybody's level and risk ability is different. So if you are going to sync to other accounts, that's going to obviously heighten the amount of risk you're taking because it's directly tied to those financial institutions. A lot of the apps that have been created and used and been around for a while haven't had any security breaches or very minor security breaches. It's typically the credit card that has a security breach. It's a little bit trickier on apps to have security breaches just because it's not directly tied. Like somebody would have to physically get your phone or know your login to be able to get all your information off of there, where you think about how much you hand over a credit card and that kind of stuff as well. Again, having the two-factor authorization, I remember the words, is an ideal, or, and that could be like, it may not be sending to another app, but having to log into Venmo, as somebody shared, making it Face ID before you can pay, doing those sorts of stuff. With everything online, like it's your comfort level. They're not any riskier than having your Facebook account on there. There's a lot of information you can get it from somebody's Facebook. And again, apps are really personal. I always love this one because I love at the end reading through all the comments and people saying, oh, I love this. And then the next person will say, I hate that app because da, da, da. So we all have different needs and stuff as well. And I did see somebody ask, like, is there a link for PowerPay? And we will, Sharon's putting it into the chat, and we do send a follow-up email that will have the link to PowerPay as well as a PDF of this presentation. All right, I'm going to go quick to Excel because I know there was a few people who said that. So benefit of Excel is that it is customizable to you and your needs. It's accessible for most people, and it focuses on the 4 parts of budgeting. So income, expenses, savings, and debt reduction. We do have an Excel budget that I use all the time for one-on-one financial counseling that will be included in the follow-up email as well. So if that works, is something you want to try, feel free to. But you start with your income in Excel, and this one has a whole bunch of income listed because I don't know what everybody's income comes from. So we want to make sure we're thinking about that for each person's circumstances. It also works in a Google Sheet. I'll link that as well. And you're able to just make a copy and put in your numbers, and it should do the math for you, which is also ideal. If math is not your strong suit, it's nice to have that as well. So you start with your income, you put that in, and then you look at your expenses. And you think about your fixed expenses, so same date, same amount of payments. Those are things like your housing, health insurance, internet. Your flexible are typically the same date, but there's varying amount payments. So your utilities and credit cards. It could also be like your groceries, where are varying dates and varying amounts. Gasoline is that as well. And then we all have those things that are kind of semi-annual or annual infrequent payments that we might make, like our vehicle registration, needing stuff for home maintenance, if we have any streaming subscriptions or websites, just subscriptions or membership fees. All of those things are things to think about. There's also, within our expenses, there's also a monthly savings target. So pay yourself first. You are taking money from your income coming in and paying it to yourself. So this is why that's underneath the monthly savings target. And we also address, like your current debt. So the revolving credit cards would be, if you have 3 credit cards, what is the minimum payment you have to make? Should always be included in your monthly expenses. You might charge more, but you want to make sure if you have credit card debt that you're meeting that monthly minimum payment so that you're not having it affect your credit score as well. So you put in your income, your expenses, and then, are you in the red or black? So take your total monthly income minus your total monthly expenses. If it zeroes out, that's called a zero balance budget. It means you have a plan for every single dollar you have. And that could just mean you're putting more into savings, or having more into home maintenance, car maintenance, that kind of stuff. You can have a positive amount, so you're in the black, which is good. And then you can decide what you're going to do with that money. And you can also be in the red, which means you have spent too much more money than you have income for. And how are you going to cover that? for the month, and then how are you going to adjust your budget? So that's where the whole part of the budget cycle, like evaluating the plan. Do I need to make more income? Where do I need to reduce expenses? Do I need to do a combination of both? Those sorts of things as well. So that's using Excel. Again, if you use Excel, it is not as accessible as an app because typically desktop works better. It's very tricky to do it on your phone, not impossible, but it's not fun. I've tried it. You can always print out and have that, and if you are a pen and paper type of person, but it's not as accessible, but it is a nice visualization of what is happening and where are my finances as well. I see there are questions coming in, but I also realize we are a little bit over time. So we will address the questions at the end. If you do need a certificate of participation or here because of U of M well-being points, Sharon is going to put the link for the evaluation. When you do the evaluation, that will fill that out, and then that'll send you for the U of M webinars or to request a certificate as well. And we do have some more webinars coming up. Next week, we have plugging your spending leaks. And that's our last of our 4-part Thrifty Thursdays as well. And then there's a whole bunch of other webinars. And we invite you to, look at all of the webinars and engage with us on social media. All right, that was a very quick review of everything. So now we will answer some questions if there are some.
Oh, well, Kentara had a really good question, but she had to jump off, but other people might find it helpful. She asked, or they asked actually, are there any apps